It's the George Plaster Show. 30 years of the best sports talk in Middle Tennessee. Featuring Tennessee Sports Hall of Famer Watson Brown. And it's a shame it's taken this long to get an introduction for this Tennessee Sports Hall of Famer, Kelly Holcomb, along with young gun Billy Derrick. And now, here's your host, George Plaster.
Good afternoon. Welcome into the George Plaster Show. And as you can see, we're not in our normal digs at the Fordyce Center out in Bellevue, broadcasting from my house. Kelly is at his house, and George is a little under the weather. So no director today, no producer, as George would say. But we got a lot to get into in terms of March Madness. We're going to talk about Auburn winning the SEC tournament title on Sunday in front of a packed crowd of Auburn fans. So we'll get into that. Also, the NCAA tournament field is set. We'll see where Tennessee, we'll talk about their draw with St. Peter's, Kentucky, facing off with Oakland, both those games on Thursday. And we do have a little bit of NFL news to get to. So we'll get into all that. We've got Kerry Keating, former Santa Clara head coach, and also an assistant at Tennessee. So he's coached at the college level for a while. He'll check in with us at 2:20, and then Coach B will join us at about 3 o'clock or so on the phone. But let's bring in Kelly Holcomb from Murfreesboro. Kelly, what's going on?
William, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. We're rolling. We're off and rolling. I didn't know George was sick until probably Sunday.
So George has got the sniffles. Then he just called it quits on the sniffles.
Yeah, he called it quits on us. But hey, that doesn't happen often. I mean, it takes a lot. I feel like it takes a lot for George to commit to that. He called me this morning. He didn't seem happy about it, but we're ready.
I text him trying to find out what we're going to do with the day, and he told me to call you, and he said he felt pretty bad. So
yeah,
I was about to tell George to put his big boy pants on. We all feel bad sometimes, and get to the set. Let's go.
Did you ever wake up, I mean, on a game day or day before a game and just felt like crap? I mean, did you ever, I'm sure you, being Kelly Holcomb, never told a coach, I'm sick, I can't play. But, I mean, surely there was a day, whether it was high school.
I never did that, but I can remember we were playing the Bengals, and I woke up, and I've had arthritic problems with gout and stuff. I got that when I don't know. It's just a deal that goes on in your body, man. It's arthritis, and it's a acute form of arthritis. And I woke up one morning, man, I could not walk.
Oh my!
And I had
gosh.
to play. Yeah, I had to play. It was against. We were playing the Bengals, and I was with the Bills, and I literally couldn't walk. And I got up and I told the doctor, Dr. White, I can remember, and I used to always have to get shots of some sort, man, to get through something. And 30 minutes before the game, I took a needle about that long in my big toe, and I couldn't. I walked. I mean, I was good. I played the game, but then after, man, you feel so bad. So there's a lot of things that I did looking back on it that I probably would not do now because it's taken a huge toll on my health as I've gotten older.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for George, he's I don't know if he's the one to take a shot before a broadcast and stick it out, but
no, I wouldn't think George would be that way.
Hey, but he'll be back, I'm sure. It might be tomorrow, might be Wednesday. We'll see, but we'll get George back in the saddle and back at the Fordyce Center. But Kelly, I was Sunday at the SEC Tournament Championship. Auburn had, I think Bridgestone's 18,000. Auburn had to have had 16,000 people. I mean, it was a ton of Auburn fans, and they win the SEC title. Janai Broome, 19 points, 11 rebounds. He's the most outstanding player of the SEC tournament. And the way they're playing right now, I don't know if you got to watch much of their run, but it's not like they were playing chopped liver. I mean, they beat up A&M. They beat South Carolina in that first game, and then they go and beat Florida, a team that was as hot as anybody. In Florida, it was their fourth game in 4 days, and I'm sure you've seen this, whether it's football, basketball, probably not as much in football, but in basketball, you get to that third, fourth game in 4 days. It's hard. So a lot of times in these championships, the team, there's either a team that, that is just gassed and it doesn't mean they're not as good as the team they're playing. It's just, they're playing their fourth game in 4 days, and it's just hard. But Florida's still good, but that Auburn team is playing like a team that can make the Final Four, I think.
Yeah, they're really good, man. They cause a lot of. It's kind of like Bruce Pearl's personality, man.
Yeah.
I know he was the coach at UT, but they bring a lot of chaos onto the floor, and they exist through chaos, man. And that Janai Broom kid, we talked to his former coach at Morehead State the other day, and man, he's a good player.
Yeah.
How do you, if you're Morehead State, how do you pick up after that? I understand it, but just like that coach said, you can't cry over spilled milk. You got to go on about it, man. But he's a really good player. He's physical. He makes some awkward shots.
He hit one where he was spinning up in the air. I was like, how did that go in?
Oh yeah, it's amazing, man. Some of them guys, the things that they can do and the athleticism that they bring, and you got guys hollering at each other. Even the kids are hollering at Bruce Pearl, which I don't know how much I could take as a coach. I grew up with Coach Donnelly, but I know that Bruce Pearl, he seems like he likes that. He likes guys that are competitive and get emotional. I don't know if I can handle it, man, but it's just he makes it all work out of chaos to me, and it's amazing. And then you get the three teams that had double byes. You get UT, you get Alabama, and you get who was the other one? Kentucky. You get all three of them, and all three of them lose.
Yeah.
So, and then you get Auburn, who had a double bye, and they win the whole deal. So I don't know. I'm going to ask Coach Keating about that. Like, what's his thoughts on that? Because I just as a coach, would you rather keep playing or do you want to rest your guys? Because the three teams that rested their guys got beat.
Yeah.
And then the one team that I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just I don't know. What would you rather do? Would you rather rest your guys or keep playing?
In the conference tournament, Calipari talked about it after their loss to A&M, and I was there too, which kind of shocked me. But there's just different motivation. A&M is a team that was desperate. That they were playing for seeding. They wanted to get into the tournament. Kentucky's already in the tournament. But for Auburn, they're already in the tournament too. But they still had as much motivation as anybody, and they got kind of screwed with their seeding. They got stuck with the 4 line. They got sent out to Spokane, Washington. And so I think if you're a coach right now, and this will be a good question for Kerry too, what is the motivation? I mean, are coaches now in these conference tournaments just going to say, screw it? Hey, if the conference tournaments don't matter, I'm going to sit my best player, or I'm going to sit this guy that might be banged up a little bit, because if my seed's not going to change, if I win the SEC tournament, which is one of the best conferences in the country, I'm going to start sitting guys and basically tell my guys, hey, this doesn't matter. I'm sure there are coaches that wouldn't say that, but I mean, it feels like that's where we're getting with this.
That's what I get, and that's why I keep asking this question. And I'll ask these guys, even Coach B. So if you're in the SEC, if you're in the ACC, if you're in the Big Ten, you don't have to win the tournament to go to the NCAA tournament. But then you get these mid majors that. I bring it up all the time. Years ago when Kermit Davis had, I think he was like 28-6.
Yeah.
And he won the conference. He won the conference, not the tournament, but he won the conference. Mm-hmm. And then he messes up. They mess up. They start missing shots. There's something on the bucket. No shots were going in. It's kind of like what happened to UT the other night. And they're a mid-major, so they don't win the tournament. They don't get to go on, and they deserved it. Yeah. I mean, I think the conference tournament should not weigh as heavy as the conference regular season. And I don't know where there's a common denominator with that, Billy, but I don't understand it. And then you got teams like the SEC, that UT is going to either be a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed. So what's their motivating factor? They've already won the conference championship, regular season championship.
Yeah. So
what's the motivating factor in that? Because it's human nature to say, well, okay, we lose. It really doesn't matter. I mean, the only thing that they were playing for was a number 1 seed, and it was still up in the air because you had North Carolina and Arizona there too. So if they won their conference tournaments, which North Carolina got into it as a number 1 seed. So I don't know. It's a question that you got to answer. And I don't understand I don't understand as a coach how you motivate your kids through that.
Yeah. Anyway, Auburn gets the win on Sunday, and that's their 3rd SEC tournament title. They won it back in '85. They won it in 2019. So there's a big gap there. And then they won it again this year. So We'll talk a little bit more about Auburn's draw in the NCAA tournament a little bit later, but a couple of draws of note, Kelly. Kentucky, I think, again, I don't know if you've been able to look at the bracket a ton, but we'll be talking about it throughout the show. Kentucky draws Oakland, a team, again, I don't even know what conference they're in. It's better than drawing, Samford or, a dangerous team from the SoCon. So they'll play Thursday night at 6. And then Tennessee, they'll play St. Peter's late Thursday night at about 8:30. I laugh when I saw St. Peter's is one of the only 15 seeds to ever beat a 2. But this St. Peter's team's a little bit different. They're not, their coach, Shaheen Holloway, is no longer there. He went to Seton Hall. But if you're a Tennessee fan, I don't know if that's the 15 you want to face, because just with the, the history of that.
I agree, man. You just never know, and there's always – this is what makes March Madness so cool, is there's always upsets, and you never really know. And St. Peter's made that run all the way to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. Was it last year or was it the year before?
I think it was the year before, so a couple years ago.
Year before. Yeah. It was a couple of years ago. Yeah. I mean, they were a 15 seed, and they made it to the Elite Eight. So – and I think they beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
They beat Kentucky. So you just never know. Like, a team can get hot. Even a 14, 15, 16 seed can get hot. Of course, 16. Yeah, that's what I was saying right there. Yeah. Kentucky and St. Peter's. But, I think a 16 seed has only beat a number 1 seed, which was the Virginia debacle way back. Yeah, way back when. But you just never know this time of year, and that's what makes it great, and that's why everybody loves to watch.
Yeah, elsewhere in the SEC on Thursday, Mississippi State's going to play Michigan State. First game of the whole thing on Thursday. So tough draw for Mississippi State. They got to play Tom Izzo in Michigan State. South Carolina is going to play Oregon at 3 o'clock on Thursday. And then Kentucky and Tennessee will play. And then Friday, Auburn and Yale. So, again, you just never know. You can't ever sleep on any of these teams. Yale, even though they're from the Ivy, you could get hot, got some shooters. Florida will play the winner of Boise State or Colorado in the play-in game. That'll be Friday. A&M will play Nebraska Friday night, 5:50, and Alabama will play Charleston 6:30 on Friday night. So we'll keep talking about a lot of those games. Of course, I got Coach B and Kerry Keating coming on today, so we'll get their take on a lot of that. But Kelly, I want to get to a story over the weekend. Duquesne, they won the Atlantic 10. And they got a bid to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1977. And their coach,
I did not know that.
It's kind of a sad story. So before this season, their coach, Keith Danbrot, who's actually coached LeBron James in high school, he led Duquesne to 4 wins in 5 days in the A-10 tournament. But his wife was diagnosed with cancer. I'm not sure how long ago. But before this season, he said he was about 80% sure he was going to retire. But then this happened, I guess, during the season at some point. And so he actually just announced his retirement. After the tournament, he'll coach, their tournament game. But I think that's really cool to see, because a lot of times you see tragedy, whether it's in your family and then something historical like this happens. I think this is a really cool story that I hope doesn't go unnoticed, because even in the midst of a tragic situation with his wife, he makes the tournament for his team, first time in over 40 years, which is incredible. So I wanted to get that out there, just because that doesn't happen often. I mean, and that's a team that, who knows, maybe they make a run.
Yeah, that seems like a God thing right there, man. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. Something like that happens, and it's cool that he. I mean, more people, and I'm sure more people would do that, but family is more important than anything. That's what I've tried to teach my children. Like, man will let you down. Human beings will let you down. It's hard to find a true friend in this life, but you've got family, and sometimes even families turn on each other. But when you hear something like that, man, I mean, the most important person in your life, your wife, your spouse. And when something like that happens, man, it sucks, but good for him that he's going to the NCAA tournament, but then he's retiring. He's going to help his wife, hopefully, and hopefully she makes it through.
Really cool. And I think he got a little choked up in his press conference earlier today. So congrats to them. There were a few teams that missed out. Rick Pitino and St. John's miss out on the tournament. Oklahoma missed out as a bubble team. Pittsburgh, a lot of people thought they should have been in the tournament. They missed out. They all declined their invitations to the NIT, though. So you're seeing a lot of teams not even, not want to even go to the NIT. So I wanted to get that out there. On the women's side of it, Kelly, Vanderbilt made the tournament after a 10-year hiatus. They're going to be the 12 seed, and they will play Columbia on Wednesday night in Blacksburg, Virginia. So they're technically in that play-in game. So Vandy is in. The Lady Vols are in, and this streak is ridiculous. Did you know about this streak? I didn't even know. The only program to appear in every NCAA women's tournament. So they earned their 42nd straight postseason bid.
Is UT. Wow.
The Lady Vols. So they're the 6th seed. They're going to play in Raleigh, North Carolina against NC State, the 3 seed. So NC State, the host of that regional pod there. And then the Lady Raiders. They're traveling down to Baton Rouge, and they're going to play Louisville as the 6th seed. So MTSU is the 11th seed. And I was listening to Coach Insel earlier this morning on another station, and he had said that he thought maybe they should have been a 9 seed, maybe, or even an 8 seed. That's a good MTSU Lady Raiders team, Kelly. And if they win, they might play LSU.
It really is, and that's where I go with these mid-major schools, man. Like, they're really good this year, and he's got girls that can shoot. He's got a couple of Russian girls that are really tall and are pretty physical inside. So you think that you should be this and that, and the committee a lot of times don't weigh that. I mean, it's like they're 11 seed, and I'm kind of like with him. I thought they should be seated a little bit further up, but that's what you get, man. Sometimes with all this stuff, you get, MTSU is not an Oregon, is not a, and you just hate it because I think they're pretty good this year.
Yeah, it's hard to complain too when you're in because there's a lot of bubble teams that didn't get in, and they're sitting there, not even in the tournament. So, congrats.
Yeah, I mean, if you're them though, go in and win a couple of games, and then maybe next year if you get in, I mean, you'll get a little bit more consideration for moving up a little bit.
What a job he's done, though. I know George is close with him. I'm sure you met him before. I think he's in his 70s. He's done a heck of a job there, and he's one of the best interviews, Coach Insel over there in the borough. So we'll be watching that one. They will play, like I said, Louisville as the 6th seed. So they'll be down there in Baton Rouge. Also, Kelly, real quick before we go to the break, the Preds extend their point streak to 14 games. And the point streak doesn't necessarily mean a win, but if you lose in overtime, that's still a point. They beat the Kraken 4-1 out in Seattle on Saturday night, and then they will play tomorrow night against the Sharks, who are awful. Sharks only have 16 wins on the year, so I'm sure we'll have Guy on later this week to talk about that. But we're going to roll on. We've got Kerry Keating, former Santa Clara head coach, also assistant at Tennessee, and maybe we'll learn something else about where Kerry's been because all I knew was Santa Clara. Kelly said, "Oh, he's at Tennessee as well." So. We'll get Kerry Keating on the show coming up right after the break.
It was the most horrible experience that any mother could ever go through. I knew that I needed to get help. My friend, she immediately said, "You need to call Bart Durham." And you guys were there within an hour. You guys are like family for us.
Yeah, sure is nice to connect with the people that you're doing your best to help.
As the trusted premier custom home builder in Middle Tennessee, Donnelly Timmons has over 20 years of experience in the industry. Whether you're looking to build your dream home or renovate your current home, their team will ensure that every client and every remodel is unique, luxurious, and completed on time within budget. Founders Dustin Timmons and Joey Donnelly have over 25 years of construction experience in the Nashville area. Together, they have completed projects in Forest Hills, Oak Hill, Green Hills, Franklin, and Brentwood. Dustin and Joey believe that communication is the most important aspect of all construction projects. Therefore, they personally manage each project themselves and are involved in job site activities on a daily basis. Their commitment to quality and integrity has earned them an outstanding reputation among their clients. Contact them to set an appointment for a free consultation or to view some of their completed projects. Give them a call at 615-456-7983 or log on to DonnellyTimmons.com.
I'm Watson Brown.
I'm Kelly Holcomb.
I'm Billy Derrick.
We're the George Plaster Show. We've been Nashville's best sports talk for the last 30 years. And you know what? we still are.
Catch us live weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Central Time in Nashville on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, the podcast version is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Looking for more than just awards and trophies? Southern Trophy House is your one-stop solution. For over 60 years, their team has created lasting impressions with a personalized touch. From embroidery to screen-printed apparel to corporate awards, signs, and name badges, they have everything you need to keep your brand shining bright. With their knowledgeable customer service team, you can relax as they create, produce, pack, and ship merchandise and awards on time and on budget. That includes etched crystal awards, custom-cut acrylic, name badges, embroidered Richardson ball caps, banners, screen-printed T-shirts, laser-engraved Yeti cups, and knives. Recognize your hard-working team from Southern Trophy House, where they do their best to help you recognize your best. Located at 2705 Nolensville Pike in Nashville, give them a holler, 615-256-7295. Visit southerntrophy.com. Southern Trophy House, for all your personalization and recognition needs.
Well, Kelly, we've already botched the show, didn't we? Kerry Keating, former
Vandy, yeah.
Kerry, that's what happens with George.
I read somewhere it was Tennessee too, though. Were you not at Tennessee? You were, yeah, okay,
yeah.
Not only that, I think, to my knowledge, the only person to ever work on a Carolina and a Duke staff. So I was on Carolina. I was on Tommy Amaker's staff at Seton Hall. Of course, Buzz and I were together at Vandy back in the early '90s, and then I rejoined him at App State, and then Tulsa, then Tennessee. So I did the Vandy Tennessee deal. So I caught both ends of the Vandy Lance show at the end zones, good and bad.
Oh,
wow. And so a lot of double-sided tape on my career. So
I like it. Okay, so we didn't botch it totally. We just didn't include Vanderbilt. So that makes it a little bit better.
You got to go back to the beginning. That's where it all started.
Kerry, we're going to get into a lot here. We've also got Coach B coming on, so we may dive into the bracket with Coach B as well. But I want to start at Vanderbilt. And, of course, you got a taste of Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Duke, UNC, as you said. They've made a change at the head coach spot in basketball with Jerry Stackhouse after a 5-year tenure that just didn't work out. It wasn't working out this season. And, last year, if they make the tournament, is it a little bit different? Who knows? But what was your take on that and maybe the direction Vanderbilt should go and how good and intriguing of a job this can be?
I've always held that job in Nashville in particular in very high regard, not just because it was one of the first 3 places that I started my career at, but I always felt, and keep in mind, I was at Vanderbilt in the mid-'90s. This was before minor league baseball, before football, before hockey. Obviously, at that time, Memorial Gym was the place to be. I remember quite a few country music stars showing up to our games and thinking I might have had an outside shot with Shania Twain back in the day, but that not being, that notwithstanding, I still think any team that's affiliated at this juncture with a league like the SEC should and is going to have a chance to be successful. Now, is it going to look exactly like the same blueprint at Tennessee or a Mississippi State or an Auburn? No, I think we're all quite well aware that it is a little bit different, but I never thought that should be used against it. As far as success goes, I was fortunate to have a long career, over 25 years, and the majority of which were at schools that were very academically rigorous. Wake Forest, Santa Clara, of course, Vanderbilt, and back in the day, pre-COVID, pre-transfer portal, pre-now NIL, that was viewed as a crutch because you didn't have as much of a pool to recruit from. I always viewed that as a positive. To me, if you're really hyper focused on what you wanted as a coach, it just kind of got you a little bit more narrow minded towards the guys that you really wanted and who you could get. And you're offering something that not a lot of schools can. You're offering a level of education that's very, unique. It's something that I think obviously still holds true even this day and age of transferring and jumping around and free agency and what's going to happen in college athletics now, shifting into an actual business on the above board business, not the business that we all know in the SEC that's been going on for years, which again is another thing that I think Vanderbilt kind of, was up against. It is what it is. I could go on and on football, basketball about, the influences in the southeastern part of the country, but it's big business. It's big money. Alumni carry a lot of weight, and they still do. But Vanderbilt's had success in other sports that I think can still be replicated in basketball. And look, you've got probably the most unique setup in terms of a home court advantage in the entire country. I think there might have been one other school way back that was baseline benched orientated. I don't know if that's the case other than Vanderbilt. Now, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I still think Vanderbilt's a highly desirable job. I think you can have success there. And I think that when and if that person gets in there, you're going to find a revival of sorts of people coming back around to support what is really the only real basketball show in town, obviously in Nashville at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, we've talked a lot about this. I mean, we kind of track this season a lot because George, so deep rooted with former players, alums that do want to invest in the program and want to see Vanderbilt basketball succeed. How important is that as a coach, whether you're at Vanderbilt or from your time at Santa Clara, assistants at Tennessee, Vandy, Duke, UNC? How important is it to involve those former players, not allowing them to get too invested? But I mean, you want that, you have to have it, and it just didn't feel like Stackhouse really did that much at all. And you have to. So how important is that? And for Vanderbilt, how easy is it to maybe get them back?
Look, it may start to dissipate in terms of true alumni and even your transfer alumni that were there for 2 years, the old school junior college transfers, or maybe one transfer that finished his career there and exits as an alum, if you will, part of the prior program, but an alum of the current one. I always cringed when I would go to visit places or hear of my former staff or just people at other places that didn't embrace alumni. I think you're really hurting yourself if you don't embrace all of the alumni that have been there before. It was one of the very first things I did when I got to Santa Clara as a head coach was bring back all of the former coaches, give them full and unfettered access to your program, to the building, to the gym, whenever they wanted to come to practice. This isn't uncommon, but I think it started a little bit about, late 2000s. We started putting up the former players' numbers in lockers. And yeah, it wasn't their locker per se. Maybe you changed the locker room, but we actually had, I think we might have done this when I was at Tennessee, when Buzz and I got there. Actually, I take that back. We did it at Tulsa because Tulsa was one of the first places I went to that had a nice on-campus arena and a really dedicated locker room. We actually set up lockers specifically for the former players so that when they wanted to come back and work out or go to a practice or just be on campus, they had a place to go. It was always going to be theirs, and it was a shared locker room. And then we started to, put up a lineage and a history of maybe that number that you had and who had that number before you, or maybe just your home. I know at Knoxville when we started redoing the locker room, it seems like every place I went to about 6 or 7 different places. I was always taking over the locker room aesthetics. We were always changing the locker room. Like it's crazy how it's a never-ending evolution of it was great for it's never good enough until the new guy comes in. But one thing that we did at Tulsa and carried over to Knoxville was we put the players' hometowns up there. And it seems kind of innocuous and obviously, but you want to have an appreciation for everybody came from that they're there together. And then we started saying, well, who else is from that state? Like I can't stress enough. It's crazy to even ask that because to me, it's a given. It's the very first thing you do. It's not your program. It's a program that's been here before. It's going to be here long after you're gone. You must include the former players. You must give them ownership in the program. You must be able to invite them in whenever they want to be there. Practice, meetings. There needs to be a sense of pride and ownership in that program that will stand the test of time. And by the way, you're going to go through ebbs and flows. Not everyone's going to have championship seasons every year. The strength is in the past success that you had to know they went through it too, and how did they get through it? Because every program essentially has that. And some are not as low as others, but they maintain that level of success. And it's all built on the former players. And look, I think one of the best things that's happening now in taking off the restraints that we have as coaches in terms of who can access these players. And I'm not talking about dumping loads of money on them. I'm just talking about just being able to have conversations with them that are relevant to their decision about where they're going to have their career. Bringing those former players back into the recruiting process as much as you're allowed to. And I know it was kind of skirted around and, we just happened to be on campus this day. And, we're recruiting at Carolina. Michael Jordan happens to be on campus today. Oh, really? Oh, it has nothing to do with me being the number one player in the country, does it? Like, we all get it, right? But I think it's super, super important. I cringe when I hear that's an issue, because I think that is a given. It's a pillar. It's a standard. Former players are always going to be the lifeblood of your program. Absolutely and unequivocally are probably the second most important people in the program other than the current players.
Well, and I'm sure all these teams, especially a lot of these 1 seeds, are doing that. And Kelly, I'll get to you, and you can chime in here as we kind of dive into a little bit of the bracket. And Kerry, you can pause me if you haven't been as in depth in the bracket as maybe we have, or me specifically. But this is a list of the top 4 seeds by region: UConn in the East, Houston in the South, North Carolina in the West, and Purdue in the Midwest. Which 1 seed do you think has, I don't want to say easiest, but has the best shot to get to the Final Four? Is this a year where you may see some, several 1 seeds, whether it's 2 or 3, or even you rarely get all 4, but how do you look at where these 1 seeds stack up, and then maybe how tough some of those 2, 3, and 4 seeds are in a lot of these regions?
You look at, just starting from the bottom before we get to the top, the 4 seeds are somewhat flawed outside of Auburn, who obviously just won the SEC and is getting some favorable love from the books right now. My future bet on Auburn to be a national championship actually has an even money payout right now, the cash out, which tells me that all the even money, and that's higher than UConn's. I think on every $10 bet, UConn's cash out on DraftKings is in the low 9s. Auburn's is right at 10. So I think Auburn's a very trendy gambling pick right now. Figuring that they would eventually run into UConn, but even at that, UConn had no favors done as the top seed in the overall tournament by getting a mysteriously placed 8th seed overall in Iowa State. I know the metrics obviously favor them better, but you watch them play and watch what they did to a team like Houston twice this year, how they've been able to defend. I think they were the only team to hold Houston under 30 points and a half twice this year. Houston's obviously a very, very tough team. I saw Houston's worst output of the year in person. I was at the Kansas-Houston game out in Lawrence this year, and just saw Kansas put it on them, and maybe it was an anomaly, but just watching Houston, how they act, how they play, how tough they are, they're going to be a very, very difficult out in that tournament. And if Tyler Kolek is not healthy enough for Marquette, I think Houston has probably the easiest just on paper. I think Duke's a paper tiger this year, but I think UConn's got the toughest one. I like Houston's route. Outside of Kansas, I would take any of those 3 teams. Matter of fact, 3 of the 8 teams that I chose 2 weeks ago in the future national championship are Purdue, Tennessee, and Creighton. So I love that. I love that bracket. I think it's setting up for an unbelievable Elite 8. If Kansas can escape that, and not have the letdown, they got a great starting 5, but with their 2 top scorers injured and presumably, not in full health, their bench is super thin, which does not bode well in NCAA tournament play. And then you go out west, and you guys probably know more about Alabama than I do, and I think they sound good. maybe based on their past, they should be better. I'm out here in North Carolina now and get a chance to see Carolina quite often. I think they're playing really, really well. I was shocked that they didn't seal the deal and finish off NC State, but NC State riding that adrenaline the 5-day run. I like Carolina and Arizona, and I do like Tennessee, although I think Purdue is destined. And when you have a guy like Zach Edey, that's very, very difficult to defend and can shoot free throws. That's a tough out. So, yeah, long story short, I think you might see 3 1 seeds in this year's, and I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 made it through, although it wouldn't be easy.
Right.
But I think it's due for this type of season that it could be an all 1 seed affair once we come to the Final Four.
I'm with you. I got one more before we get to bring it over to Kelly. I think he wants to talk more about Tennessee and Kentucky and their draws, but the conferences with multiple bids. Big 12 and SEC got 8. Big 10 with 6. Mountain West with 6. But, Kerry, the Mountain West, I thought, got screwed with some of their seed lines. I mean, there's some really good teams out west, in particular with the Mountain West, even in the Pac-12 with a team like Oregon who's really good and kind of snuck up late in the season. But teams like Utah State, Nevada, you've got some really good Mountain West teams that I think have great chances to pull off upsets in the first round. And 6 teams from the Mountain West in the tournament. That's almost unheard of.
There'll be very trendy picks in the first 2 rounds for that reason, because maybe they're a little bit underseeded. And I think 2 of them might be favored as lowered seeds. I think New Mexico might have been favored, and maybe Nevada as well. Very well coached teams. I think one thing that's in common with all those teams is they all are very well coached. I mean, Colorado State, Nevada, obviously Utah State. I've known Danny since he was an assistant out at Fullerton. We were at UCLA. We were running around gyms together. Really, really solid. Did a great job quickly at Montana State. And what a job he did with not inheriting a single minute off a roster that Ryan Odom left behind on his way to VCU. It might mean that he may not even coach those guys again next year. I think he's probably the odds-on favorite to be the new coach at Washington, to be quite honest with you. And that's just the way it is. But the thing that really shocked me was Clemson getting in over Pitt. And then I'm curious how UConn, who played the majority of their games, obviously, against the Big East, was the number 1 overall seed, yet they only took 2 other teams from the conference. It just didn't kind of measure up. And, I think what happens sometimes is you get really strong voices in there and you get advocates. And unless they've changed this formula, at least in the past, I know from experience and ADs that I was fortunate to be around who were on the committee, they would have each committee member would have 3 leagues they were responsible for. They had to put the dossier together for those conferences. If they were able to, and that hopefully they were able to go out and watch these teams play throughout the year. Most of them are regionally based. And then they would become the advocates for those leagues in the room. Now, you have to leave the room, obviously, for talking about, I think, your school. I don't know if maybe it's a school in your conference, if it goes that far. But I think it sets up that if you get a pretty strong voice representing your conference, this is the result of that. So I haven't heard any of the interviews ask that question. And it would be one thing I would ask to the committee chairman. Which committee member was in charge of the Mountain West and which one was in charge of the Big East? And just leave it at that. I wouldn't even have a follow-up question. I would let the answer speak for itself, because I think everyone's going to know who those folks are. And I think the answer would present itself. And I think there's a lot more of a human element involved in this when it happens like this than all these metrics that they lean on. Like, they turn around and say, I think they said Michigan State have quad 1 wins. They had 1 or 2, right? Like, it's just, there's so many, inequalities in this that I think are blamed or justified with metrics and data now that we're overloaded with this, and not enough of the human element taken into account, because there's still humans making this decision until we completely blow that up and let ChatGPT and all the AI do it, which at this point is what we should do in baseball with the freaking umpires. And we might as well just let the computers choose everything. Then there's no doubt. The computers did it all. Here's the formula. Here's what you got to do. You got to win this game. You got to win this game by 40 points. You got to win this game by 20. Take all the guesswork out, and we don't have any of this crap worrying anymore. And 18 teams on the bubble. It is what it is. So I would love to ask those guys when they do these interviews, like, just out of curiosity, who's in charge of the Mountain West? Who's in charge of the Big East? And just, okay. And maybe we'll get some follow-up and talk to them directly and let them explain why they were so adamant about those teams getting in. And then your follow-up, why are they seated where they're at? And then they go in, they use one to explain the other, and in the end, neither of it makes sense.
Kelly, what you got?
Coach, how you doing?
Great. Good to see you, man. We're missing George today, but that means we all get to talk more. Don't have to listen.
That's
to George.
correct. I enjoy this. I enjoy listening to you, man. So being in Tennessee and a lot of Vols fans here, everybody calls Rick Barnes, which I like, man. My son-in-law is a basketball guy. He went up there and watched him practice last year, and after he came home, I loved him even more, and I haven't even met him. But everybody around here and in Knoxville calls him regular season Rick, which I'm not a big fan of. What do you think about their team, and how far is Dalton Connect? Obviously, the SEC Player of the Year. How much has he elevated those guys? And I think they got a real shot to win the whole thing if they can get hot.
Well, because their guards are really good. I think anytime you have really good guards, it always bodes well in this tournament, and that's obviously going to be the big thing with Purdue with the big kid in the middle, that they have to have good guard play. The guards have the ball in their hands 95% of the time, start, finish, end clock. I mean, you have to be able to make plays, but you more importantly have to be able to make good decisions. Think back to that game. I think it was Furman and Virginia, when one of Virginia's most senior dominant guards made a bonehead decision and got rid of the ball, give it back to Furman, and obviously they ended up losing the game. I think Tennessee's guards. And you can put Connect in as a guard, even though he's dynamic enough to be a forward with his size and his ability to score at the rim. If he can handle some pressure on the perimeter and essentially make himself a ball handling guard, end game situations obviously are something that are going to be very, very important. I like Tennessee for that reason. They have a big scorer, obviously a guy that can do it on a lot of different levels, but their guards are really good. They can defend, they can make shots, they're athletic. Their bigs are complementary. Rick always kind of took a little bit of heat for having all that talent in Texas at his disposal and only making one Final Four. But coaching is coaching, and I think his rebound back to get Tennessee to the level that it's at right now, after essentially getting kicked to the curb at Texas. And you can't, again, computers would never do this because computers wouldn't know any different unless you put it in the algorithm. But you can't tell me that these guys aren't sitting there and thinking like, oh yeah, Tennessee and Texas in the same bracket. That'll be good for TV. He's gonna have his shot, and he will be motivated. I will tell you this about Rick: when I was at Tennessee and he was at Texas, a lot of people confused the two of us because we both had the T on our chest, and we weren't sure unless they were actually in Tennessee or in Texas. They would confuse the two often. But we recruited in Texas a little bit because Buzz and I had been to Tulsa the year before. We spent a good year of that time in Dallas and in Houston, especially because that roster at Tulsa was littered with Texas kids. And we were down there recruiting Bracy right at the time and Darren Williams. As a matter of fact, great little story for you and an anecdote for your Vol fans. Darren Williams, we were one of Darren Williams's final four schools, and that was the 9/11 year. And we ended up having C.J. Watson come visit before Darren, and Darren was supposed to visit the next weekend, didn't because of 9/11. And I think the other schools dropped out, and he ended up going to Illinois by default. But we were trying to get Bracy right. So long story short, we were going into Texas. And I remember going into a gym in Texas, and Rick came in there. He's like, hey, and he was kind of joking at the time, but I think he was really serious. He grabbed my arm because, I'm a young assistant. I'm going to be in there as much as I can. I'm going to rock the power tee and Rocky Top wherever I can. The outlandish gear, people are going to know Tennessee's in the gym. He's like, hey, don't be coming into Texas. I'll cut your arm off. And he was serious. He knew, he's like, I'm not letting these guys come into Texas. He's going to defend his turf. He's a competitive guy, and obviously a guy that can coach. I think the regular season thing, I would think they have the best shot this year since he's been there to really make that run. And again, in that loaded bracket where I did like three of those teams to go to the Final Four, and I hate to say this, but I think Creighton's a little undervalued. And I think Greg does a great job. And I think Creighton's probably going to prove why the Big East was a better conference than just the teams that got in. That game with Tennessee lingering is probably going to be the best game of the tournament, if you ask me. I think whoever comes out of that one ends up knocking off Purdue and going to the Final Four.
Gotcha. So just stay in the SEC a little bit. Yeah, I said the other day, like UK, I mean, they're a team that is so up and down this year, and they got so much talent. But they're the team that can maybe win it all and also get knocked out in the first round as well. So what do you make of the Kentucky Wildcats this year?
You know, I look at this bracket and the way that they can score the ball and the talent that they have, you know, and obviously having some familiarity with Florida, if Florida happens to pass through Marquette, I mean, this thing is really set up for them. I mean, they're like you said, they as crazy as that sounds, you can say this about any team. You could easily see them losing on the first game, right? Just because Calipari is going to Calipari, right? He's gonna do what he does, or he just turns it loose and these kids figure it out, and they're scoring 100 points a game. Next thing you know, 2 weekends later, and everyone's talking about Kentucky going to the Final Four. Yeah, I mean, they are as much of a Jekyll and Hyde outfit as anyone in this tournament. They aren't playing a lick of defense. They're going to hope to outscore you. Take the over is all I can tell you, no matter when they're playing, because they're definitely not holding anybody under. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting tournament for Kentucky. It hasn't been a lot of talk about them. They're really, you know, nationally, you know, obviously Tennessee. You know, I tend to think that they're talented enough to not succumb to the upset in the first round. I think Oakland's very well coached, but I don't know if they're deep enough and strong enough to overcome Kentucky's talent, at least in the first round. And if that happens, in all likelihood, you're probably going to see NC State give it everything they got to maybe have a 6-win in them in the last week, but they'll run out of juice and they can't keep up with Kentucky. So I think Kentucky's got a little bit of a walk into the Sweet 16.
So let me ask you this: since you coached at both, everybody knows about the rivalry, but since you were in the rivalry, how big is the rivalry between UNC and Duke? How competitive is that? And I mean, you look at the record and it's almost even through how many years they played. So just give us a little bit of insight of being a coach about how that competitive side to that rivalry is.
Well, now living in Raleigh and living in the Triangle, and pretty much exposed more on my side of town to NC State fans, and of course they're all now completely split down the middle because before the ACC tournament, they're all ready to hire a new coach. Yep. Now it's like hats and horns. Yeah, NCAA champs. Like, you know, now they got Kevin here for $7 million more in 5 more years. So the next 5 years for NC State fans are either going to be the greatest thing ever, or it's going to be insufferable. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Carolina and Duke really don't even care about NC State. You know, and the hatred is real. Like after Carolina won the game to finish the season, like. You're over on Franklin Street. You thought they won the national championship. I mean, it is as an intense a rivalry, and you saw what happened after the game. And obviously, the students jawing each other, and the kids on Carolina going over in front of the bench of the scores table. It's really hard to describe until you actually go through it and you see it there in person. How intense it is. Like I remember coaching at certain places where, you know. It was either the magnitude of the game itself or, you know, the team that you were coaching. And I experienced this probably more UCLA than any other place because we had UCLA in 3 straight Final Fours. We're top 4, top 2, and at one point number 1 in the country. You just knew that was that team's national championship game in the preseason. But you also knew that as far as the conference went, it was going to run through you. Like the Arizona UCLA game, like you just – you know, the USC game being across town, although not at the level of Carolina and Duke, you just had this like tangible feeling in the gym, like it was just more than the game. That's every single time Duke and Carolina play. Like they have that type of intensity every time they play. And there is a lot on the line here, obviously, in the Triangle for bragging rights. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the postseason. Because you've now got 2 coaches that presumably are going to be at these schools now for the next 20 to 30 years. The way that they've both built these programs is they're only presumably allowing, if you will, people on their staff that have been either at Duke or at Carolina. You know, so again, back to our opening point. talk about former players, it's no surprise. I think maybe two of, if not the two best programs that embrace their former players on all levels are Carolina and Duke. And I think because of that, I think that fuels it. Now you're bringing them back on the staff. You have guys coming through. You've got two former players as head coaches who are tremendous in their own right. I think that has as much to do with that rivalry in that game being heated as anything else.
Man, it's going to be fun. March Madness is here, gets going tomorrow night with the first four, but Thursday, Friday are the real days there. Kerry, wish we could keep you on for maybe another segment here, but we can't. But thank you so much for taking the time, and maybe next time you're on, George will be on.
Anytime. Reach out anytime. Look forward to it. I'm sure we'll be talking throughout the tournament. Feel free to reach out. We'll do a little check-in halfway through and see how we did today.
We will.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kerry.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks, man.
Kerry Keating. Man, great visit from
Great.
Kerry
I
Keating.
could have talked to him all day. I had so many more questions for him, man, when we run out of time.
We'll go to the break. We'll talk a little Dak Prescott. Cowboys have reworked his deal. We got a short segment coming up, and then we'll be joined by Coach B. So keep it right here on the George Plaster Show.
Hit After Hit has become the baseball store in Tennessee. They have over 1,000 different models of gloves and over 1,500 wood bats. They also have several Iron Mike pitching machines as well as a Hit Tracks machine. If they don't have it, you probably don't need it. We're proud to call Hit After Hit the official shirt provider of the Plaster and Friends Celebrity Bowling Night.
Forget the fact that Sir Speedy Music City is owned by my BGA classmate James Warren. Their work stands on its own merit. James and his staff do incredible work, as evidenced by the huge banners at the Plaster and Friends Celebrity Bowling Night. If you're looking for quality to help your marketing and business communications, and you want it at a reasonable price, these are your folks. Call them at 615-832-9511 or go to print at sirspeedymusiccity.com. And be sure to tell them Plaz sent you.
Over the years, more men have started to seek help for hormone deficiencies and imbalances, and Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and wife Daphne, along with their experienced staff, give men the treatment required to improve their quality of life, improve your immune system, energy level, cognitive function, and more. There's no better time to achieve a healthy lifestyle. What are you waiting for? Give Cool Springs MD a call today for an appointment at 615-486-3458 or visit the website coolspringsmd.com.
For over 35 years, Wilson Bank & Trust has been committed to providing customized banking solutions to help individuals, families, and businesses in Tennessee achieve their goals. As your full-service community bank, we are proud to offer loans with competitive rates, local decision-making, and fast, friendly service from our experienced lenders. No matter where you are on your financial journey, Wilson Bank & Trust is ready to help you take the next step. Visit your nearest Wilson Bank & Trust office or online at wilsonbank.com to get started today. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome back in. George Plaster Show, approaching the top of the hour. Great visit with Kerry Keating, breaking down the NCAA tournament. We'll definitely be having him on again shortly to maybe talk about some games and some actual results from the first and second rounds there. But Kelly, real quick here before we get to stat of the day, let's get into Dak Prescott. This isn't anything crazy, but the Cowboys are slightly reducing his big salary cap hit. They reworked his contract going into the final year. So a $5 million roster bonus has been converted into a bonus to reduce the 2024 cap hit by $4 million to just over $55 million. So when you look at this situation here, and again, you're whenever we get into this, you're always better than George and I at this contract stuff, especially with quarterbacks and what those conversations are like. Of course, he's coming off another playoff loss. If you're the Cowboys, what do you do with Dak? What does this year mean? Is it just kind of a year where you go, hey, it may not be any different than what it has been, but we might be moving on after this year? What's the thinking if you're the Cowboys front office about Prescott right now?
Billy, this is one of the more tougher guys to evaluate, man. I mean, he had such a good year. He's kind of done everything in the regular season you can do as a quarterback, but now he's reached the point where you've got to do something in the postseason. You've got to win a playoff game. You've got to get the Cowboys to where Troy Aikman took them, and it's just so hard to evaluate him. And with these contracts that you're talking about, Billy, when you see all these big salaries that guys are getting now, a lot of that stuff is backloaded. And that's why they come to Dak Prescott and they say, we need to rework your deal. We've got to do something because, when you're getting paid $150 million, well, people don't look at it. They just see the $150 million. Well, the last year of the contract might be worth $75 million, and you're not going to see that as a player. That's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to come back just what the Dallas Cowboys are doing right now, and they're going to renegotiate, and they're going to say, hey, we can't take that salary cap hit. You've got to help us with this. And what do you do as a player? Do you sit there and say no, and then they let you go? I don't know, but he's just a hard guy to evaluate because I've always been a huge Dak Prescott fan. I think he's a good player. I really do. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. He's done everything in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Now you've got to do it in the postseason. And until you do that, there's always going to remain that question about can you win the big game? And I don't know how long you go as the Cowboys. I mean, I think maybe one more year. You've got to give him another year because you're putting pieces around him to make him successful. And he had the best year of his career last year. Now you've got to up your game and you've got to do something in the playoffs. And that's where it all rides with Dak Prescott.
2-5 in the playoffs is what it is. And you look at that and everybody says it's Jerry Jones's fault. Well, it's also Dak Prescott's got to go out there and do it for once. And credit to the Packers and Jordan Love, but that's kind of where they're at right now. So wanted to get to that. Cowboys restructuring a little bit. We'll see what goes on with Dak this year in the final year of that deal. But Kelly, let's get to stat of the day. I think this is a pretty good one today. It's brought to you by John English Antique Sports and Cards in Shelbyville. They're open during the week, Tuesday through Friday from noon to 5 and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5. Give them a call, 931-492-4304. All right, we're going March Madness, and this could be a little bit of a trick question here. The NCAA tournament.
Is this all on me, Billy?
This is all on you. Right now.
I mean,
it's not. Matthew, stat of the day is on me now. This is I'm making these up, so I know every answer. But here we go. The NCAA tournament begins tomorrow night, of course, in Dayton. Which seed has the highest upset percentage in round one? So let me rephrase that a little bit. Which higher seed over the years? This is upset percentage in history. Which higher seed has the highest upset percentage in round one? Like historically.
I was seeing something today. Is it the third seed, man, that gets beat? The third or the fifth seed? Would it be the third or the fifth seed that has the highest percentage?
It's not either of those.
I have no idea, Billy. You're gonna have to tell me, big dog.
This is like George. A lot of these stat of the days are George is just waving the white flag early, but it is the 11 seed over
11
the
seed.
6. Yeah. So,
really?
But
okay.
It's not. But the 5 is not far behind, and a lot. And I probably would have said the 5 as an answer because I had heard a lot about that's the most common, but it's actually the 11 over the 6, which is 38%. And
11 over 6.
Yeah. So keep that in mind for anybody picking a bracket.
I was close with the 5th. I was close.
You were. And that's what most people say. And then 13 seed over the 4, you'll see some of those, but you got New Mexico as an 11 playing Clemson. You've got Oregon playing South Carolina as an 11 seed, NC State and Texas Tech. NC State is the 11 there, and Duquesne is the 11 playing BYU. So there's almost always an 11 seed upset. There feels like there's almost always a 12 seed upset too. But
Right.
I thought that was interesting, and it's so rare. Could this be the year where you get another 15 over a 2? Maybe. But Kelly, like you said, it's so hard to predict. I mean, people like I've got friends that I'm picking this upset. Well, I mean, there's no way to know. I mean, you can pick an upset, but there's so many different ones that can happen. So it's ridiculous how this tournament it comes through in craziness every year.
Every year, and somebody's going to have, if a 13 seed beats a 4th seed or a 12 seed beats a 5th seed, a lot of brackets are going to be busted in the first weekend. There's no question, because you just don't think that's going to happen. And then you see the St. Peter's kids, like a couple of years ago, they got on a hot streak. Man, they had some good players. The Holloway guy that's at Seton Hall now.
Yeah.
He made some really good moves. He's a tough coach. I mean, you could tell that. And those kids take on the personality of their coach, and they were physical. They fought. They never quit, and they made just an unbelievable run into the Elite Eight.
All right, looks like we do have Coach B with us, Ron Bargatze, longtime Vanderbilt assistant, and he's been just about everywhere. And when you think of basketball in Nashville, Coach B, you there?
Hey, good afternoon,
Coach. I want to start, and again, I know you're down in Alabama right now, busy with some baseball tournament stuff, but I know you haven't gotten a chance to really dive deep into the bracket. But before we even get into the bracket, Kelly and I were talking earlier about the Auburn Tigers and how they just sort of rolled through the SEC tournament. You know, they made quick work of South Carolina. They dominated Texas A&M, and then they dominate Florida in the championship in front of basically a home crowd at Bridgestone Arena. So what do you make of that? But they got a 4 seed, Coach. So do these conference tournaments really matter to the committee at this point?
It appears that in a negative or a positive way, the tournament performance is not really taken quite as seriously. By the same token, Tennessee went from a 1 seed to a 2 seed because probably the dominance of the loss.
And then you go, to Auburn, just getting into their run with a guy like Janai Broome and so much depth. I mean, you watch that team, and we've talked about it throughout the season, Coach, but how deep do you think they could go? Do you think they're national title good? Are they just Sweet 16, Elite 8 good? I mean, what makes you think this Auburn team could potentially make a run in the tournament?
Well, there's a couple things that I like about their team. Number one, I like their coach a lot because I think all you got to do is see the intensity around his face. He had his tournament face on long before he got to Bridgestone Arena. So, plus they've got good guards. They've got depth inside. But Bruce Pearl knows how to get a team ready to play. And all the interviews I saw with him over the past 4 or 5 days, he had more intensity about him than anybody I've seen interviewed at any level.
Coach, let's get into a little bit of some of the other SEC teams. We'll start with Tennessee. Tennessee, and I was talking to you earlier on the phone about their draw. They draw St. Peter's as the 15 seed, but they'll play one of either 3 teams if they win that game. They'll either play Virginia, Colorado State, or Texas. Texas, a team coached by Rodney Terry. Of course, that could be an intriguing matchup with Tennessee. But you were talking earlier on the phone, and you said watch out for either Virginia or Colorado State as well for a potential upset bid to knock off the Vols there. And then if they do get by one of those teams, they also have Creighton on their side of the bracket. So what do you think of Tennessee's draw? And is it as favorable as maybe some of their fans and some pundits think for them?
Well, I think the Tennessee fans are really concerned by the way they were dominated by Mississippi State. That gave them some pause or some concern because they were beaten so badly. And we haven't seen Tennessee shoot that poorly, but we also haven't seen anyone defensively to put the clamps on like they did. They did a great job on connect. They weren't not, JJJ has got to give them some offense, and Vescovi's got to give them some offense. I think those are the 2 factors. I don't think you're going to see any drop-off in Ziegler. I don't think you'll see any drop-off in Adu inside. Their depth has been very good most of the year. and they've been very productive there. But they've got to connect. It's got to give them 15 to 20 points minimum for them to be good enough to advance.
Coach, let's go to Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has, I would say, a pretty favorable draw. They get Oakland as the 14 seed up in Pittsburgh, and then they'll play the winner of Texas Tech or NC State. And NC State's a team that is hot right now, but who knows if they'll be able to keep that rolling in the tournament. And then for Kentucky, they have a Florida team as the 7 seed on the other side of the bracket. Marquette is the 2 seed as well. So, and Kerry Keating, we had Kerry Keating on, who knows you well. He said he wanted to say hi. What do you think of that draw for Kentucky, and what will it take for them? Because it feels like this team can win a national title, Coach, but they can also maybe lose in the first round. That's how volatile this Kentucky team is.
I think they've got the widest range of performance anyone can. Everybody in the world's afraid of them. They don't want to have to play them. But by the same token, they've turned the ball over more than you would expect them to, and they have not been as good defensively as you expect them to be. So I think that's the 2 areas they've got to shore up to advance in the tournament. But nobody really wants to play them. They can be so tough with offensive. They put points on the board with anyone, and I just I love Dillingham. I mean, I just think he is a instant offense sort of a guy. But they've got to. I mean, Shepherd has played very well down the stretch here, so. They're Reeves also. They're just a very, very scary team because they can put so many points on the board. But they've got to play better defense and take care of the ball.
Coach, I want to ask about some of the conferences that got multiple bids, and I also brought this up with Kerry. But Big 12 and SEC both got 8 teams in the tournament. Big 10 got 6. Mountain West, Coach, they got 6 in the tournament. But I thought they were a little bit underseeded. So I think, I don't know if you agree with this, I think Mountain West team is a trendy upset pick in that first round. But also in the Big East, Coach, I know you're not the biggest Big East guy maybe, but they only got 3 in. And Kerry made a good point, I thought, about UConn. UConn they got the number 1 overall seed, but they were in a conference that only had 3 teams in and 2 other teams in, including UConn. So when you look at that, number 1, the Mountain West, would you agree with me there that you think I think some of the Mountain West teams could make some upsets there potentially early?
No question about it. I thought they've been a little bit not underrated, but underappreciated by some people because no one really sees their games. They don't really have the sexy teams that you see advancing. So, but I think my single pick would be UConn. I really like their team. I like their coach. They didn't have as tough a road this year as they've had in the past. But I think having won last year gives them a little bit of an edge, being there and having a chance to come back and repeat. I really think that SEC teams every one of them is kind of two-edged sword. South Carolina has looked very pedestrian in some games of late, but they scare you to death. They've got so much power and strength, and I don't think their depth is quite as good as some of the other teams. But Auburn is a team that's built for the tournament. A good guard play. They are. You know they're going to give you a great effort every time. Bruce Pearl is just a guy that, I mean, he breeds enthusiasm as much as any coach out there. So it's going to be but I think this tournament could have the most upsets of any we've had in the first 2 rounds.
I would agree with that. Coach, let's get to around the country here, and I'm going to bring up some SEC teams and ask you about, their draw. We got Auburn is in the East region. The other top seeds in that region, UConn, Iowa State, and Illinois. And then in the South, we talked about Kentucky. They've got Houston, Marquette, and Duke in that pod of the bracket there. In the West, Alabama has Baylor, Arizona, and North Carolina in their pod. And Tennessee has Purdue, Creighton, and Kansas. So when you look at that, Coach, me personally, I look at Auburn, and Kerry brought this up. I think Auburn's a team that could maybe knock off UConn. I mean, you look at them and you got me that because of how deep they are, I don't know that anybody wants to face them right now. But on the other side, Coach, Alabama, that's a team I think they're dangerous and they can make a run, but they don't guard anybody, similar to Kentucky. So give me some tidbits there on both Auburn and Alabama, who both actually have to travel out to Spokane.
Well, I like Auburn of all the teams between Kentucky and Alabama. I like Auburn to advance. Again, how do you handle Ebney inside? I mean, the guy is such a game changer in terms of preparation, and you just can't play them like you do most teams because he is so long and takes so many things out of play because of his height defensively. So, man, I'll tell you, I'm not smart enough to tell you who's going to win under any conditions, but I would hate to put any kind of money on any of the teams in the country because everybody's got an awfully good foe waiting around the corner. I tell you, Illinois has got a team that can really rattle your canes too. I like them. I really like Iowa State is a very underrated team. They played a really good schedule. They're a kind of team that you can kind of, because they got state behind their name, not that familiar with seeing them play a lot, but they're well coached. They really have beaten a lot of good teams this year.
Coach, I want to bring up an potential upset bid situation here for you. McNeese State. Okay. McNeese State, coached by Will Wade. They're the 12 seed playing Gonzaga, who is the 5 seed. I think Gonzaga is overseeded as a 5. Now, they played well down the stretch of the season. They beat Kentucky, but my first one there is McNeese over Gonzaga. And in the same pod, Samford playing Kansas. Kansas, a team that's banged up right now. I think McCullers and Dickinson will be back, but that's a tough draw as the 13th seed playing Samford. What do you think? In my bracket, I've got McNeese and Samford both winning. Probably won't happen, but what do you think about those two potential upset bids?
Well, first of all, I think Dickinson is the real key to Kansas. If he's healthy and that's what he does, the guy is a mountain inside. He is so strong and physical. So I see them having rested players and try to, not put everybody out there because of injury. I see Dickinson being the key to the success of the Jayhawks. Well, who else did you mention there?
McNeese State and Will Wade against Gonzaga.
Well, Will is certainly a polarizing figure, and he's dropped down, but he it seems to me like he's got the people around McNeese State's program really excited. You hardly get a guy from going from LSU to McNeese State. That's a rare move, and we understand how it could happen, how it did happen. I think Texas also is a dark horse team. They scare me to death. I mean, I'd hate Tennessee's going to really have their hands full against them if they get there.
Yeah, Coach, I got one more for you, and then we're going to go to the break. Are you good to stick with us after the break?
I've got about 10 more minutes, so let's give it a try.
Okay, let's just finish here dry in 10 more minutes. I got one more for you before I send it over to Kelly. Kelly, you might have the same question here, so I don't want to steal it, but we were talking about conference tournaments earlier, and I know I brought it up kind of in that first question, but as a coach right now, when you look at your conference tournament and say you've got a guy or two banged up, and Kansas did it this year with McCullough and Dickinson, as a coach, say you're coaching now, how do you look at that? Because if you're Auburn, if I'm Bruce Pearl, I'm pissed off because they should have at least gotten back up to a 3. I think personally, I think a lot of people agree after that run in the SEC tournament, they didn't move a single seed line. So as a coach, how would you approach it right now, especially if you've got a guy or two banged up saying, hey, this isn't worth it if our seed line's not going to change at all?
You know what Bruce Pearl is doing right now? He's making Auburn the biggest underdog role you've ever seen because he's taking that one thing right there, us against the world. And I really fear Auburn. I just think they keep coming at you. They've got good depth. They're very physical, and their guard play is very, very good. So I just think that the conference tournaments, when you see Kansas, I don't know how McCullers and Dickinson were physically, But I'm going to tell you what, they're going to be loaded for bear when they play this in the first game.
All right, Kelly, we got about 8 minutes left with Coach B. Make it count.
So we talk about Bruce Pearl a bunch, and he seems like that he brings logic out of chaos. But you've got 4 teams that had double byes. You've got Tennessee, you've got Alabama, and you got Kentucky. And then Bruce Pearl is the guy that gets those guys to win a game. And there are other 3 coaches. You got Calipari, you got Rick Barnes, and Nate Oates, really good coaches. But what makes Bruce Pearl different in that situation?
Oh, I just think he looks like he's fighting mad all the time, and no one can let up when he's around. He stays on top of them, and I think the one question would be: is he too much that way for tournament play? Is he overhyped type person? We know he's so enthusiastic and everything. So will Auburn take that SEC tournament championship and use it as a springboard, or will they let that be a little bit of a downfall emotionally for them?
So as a coach, put your coaching hat back on, Coach B. Like, do you want, if you're in the SEC, do you want the double bye, or do you want to actually play? I mean, you look at Florida, and they had to win a bunch of games to get there. But then, like, do you like the double bye in that situation as a coach?
I think double byes are 50-50 hindsight. You can rest, yes, but also you're going to play against somebody with momentum, a chance to have played on the court that is not played on very much on the college level. And so usually you look back on that and figure out, how it affected your preparation.
So Coach, I know you had this. There's obviously teams when you coached that you had trouble with. And if you're at Purdue and you're Coach Painter, he's had some it's not teams that he's dealing with, but the NCAA tournament. He's been highly ranked in the last couple of years, and he's been upset many times. Like, can Purdue get over that with the kind of team they've got, or is there too much mental baggage? How do you approach that as a coach?
I don't know. I think that the coach has got to never let himself be taken by what the fans and the people around him, whatever feeling they have, can bleed into a team and either affect them positively or negative. Somehow or another, Purdue has gotten beat when you didn't expect them to, and I would say that I do not think Purdue has what it takes to make it to the maybe to the Final Four. I don't know, but I just don't think they're going to win it. I think there's going to be at least one, maybe 2 real surprise teams that make it to the Final Four, and I don't know who they are. Nobody else does either.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. I mean, looking at these brackets, and I know I haven't studied the bracket. I'm not a bracket guy. I mean, I'm sure you probably hadn't studied it either, but other than the SEC, and maybe you put an SEC team in there, but is there a dark horse in this whole tournament that you think might have a chance to win the whole thing that nobody's even thinking about?
Well, I don't think Florida is a dark horse. I mean, people know they're pretty good, and I do think that they still have a reason. I mean, have a tendency maybe to drop a game or here and there, which you don't expect. But I think Todd Golden, is the next guy up when it comes to SEC Coach of the Year. I think Paris and South Carolina and Barnes and Tennessee are the obvious guys for Coach of the Year. But I tell you, Todd Golden has done an awesome job, and they've really matured as a team.
Yeah, and I know you got to go, so this will be my last question. But UConn won the whole thing last year. Do you think they're the odds-on favorite to win it again this year, or somebody else step out?
I wouldn't call them odds on, but if I had to put money on somebody, that's who I would take.
There you
go.
Like
that I like that Eastern mentality. They've got a coach who is a gym rat and knows how to, challenge kids and everything. So I like their team a lot.
Hey, Coach, you've been on here so much. This is just a comment for me, and I know you got to go, but you've been on here so much. I think that Billy and George both need to put you in the opener. If I were you, I would try to get that done. Okay.
Bring it on. I'm ready.
I'll work. I'll work on it. Coach B, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
See you, brother.
All right, that's Coach B. He's got to go watch some more baseball, and we got to go to the break. We'll go to the break, and we'll get Plaster's bet of the day. Even though he's sick, he's still throwing bets out there. So
did you really? Did he give you Did he give you some teams, Billy?
He did. He had a pretty good weekend too. So we'll review George's weekend right after this.
Nice.
It was the most horrible experience that any mother could ever go through. I knew that I needed to get help. My friend, she immediately said, "You need to call Bart Durham." And you guys were there within an hour. You guys are like family for us.
Yeah, sure is nice to connect with the people that you're doing your best to help.
Yo, you want to see something cool? No? Well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Step into the scene. No, nobody can do it like me. Zoop house plate with the kick cuisine. I was the black top king. 360s in my green machine. I was a kid and I was breaking down doors. Listening to Tribe, now we on a world tour.
Star Physical Therapy was established in 1997 with one great mission: to serve. If you're hurting, don't wait to receive physical therapy. You don't need a referral to see their physical therapist, and early morning and evening appointments are available. Make the call to 615-673-1420 and get rid of that pain. Star Physical Therapy, the official health provider of Football Friday. Venture Express has been helping people in this area for more than 40 years. They're headquartered in Murfreesboro with over 30 years of dedicated fleets involving production, manufacturing, and corrugated experiences. They're an asset-based company with over 700 tractors, 4,000 trailers, and 800 drivers. If you need their help, dial them up 615-793-9500 or log on to ventureexpress.com.
You know, starting to save for your future doesn't have to be difficult. Let Wilson Bank and Trust help tone up your financial goals this year. Our certificates of deposits or CDs can help your money work harder with our competitive rates, earning you more than ever before. WBT checking options allow you to earn rewards you can really use, like a high interest rate or cash back on check card purchases when you meet some e-banking qualifications. Visit your closest Wilson Bank and Trust office or online at wilsonbank.com to get started today. Member FDIC.
Final segment on a Monday. It's time for Plaster's Bet of the Day without Plaster. It's brought to you by Bart Durham Injury Law. Give them a call, 615-242-9000, or log on to bartdurham.com. Kelly, pretty good weekend for George. It's not the highest volume of picks, but Kentucky, actually, man, I forgot to make Kentucky red. They actually did not cover. So Kentucky was a loss. But Marquette, that won, and then Iowa State won as well. So 2-1 on the weekend.
Iowa State? Yeah, Iowa State. Wow.
Yeah. He hasn't had too many great weekends to look back on. So this is it's encouraging for George. But
I can't believe he's this far down. He's 9 down. I've never seen this since I've been on the show. He's always been like 5 or 6, even 10 points ahead.
Yeah, last year. Well, yeah, I guess when you came on, it was all winning, and he was
all
like
winning.
15-20 ahead. So a little bit of adversity. Maybe March Madness could either be really good or really bad. It could make it a lot worse, or maybe get back up to 500 for George.
That's true.
So we'll see what happens this week with March Madness. But he does have a bet to place, and tonight the Sixers. He's going NBA. I don't remember the last time he made an NBA bet, but the Sixers -2 against the Heat. So
okay,
I can't say I'll be watching that.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to watch it. I refuse to watch an NBA game during the regular season. Although the Dallas Mavericks had a huge one last night against the Denver Nuggets when Kyrie Irving hit that
I saw that
unbelievable left-handed shot to win the game there at the end, which is crazy, man.
I saw that. I like watching in the playoffs, but for some reason I just can't really, whether it's the defensive effort or load management. That load management stuff is really, I think, has really hurt them. And you're seeing that in every sport now in the NFL too. It's just, it's hard, especially as a fan. You gotta, maybe you're a kid going to a game and you're not even gonna be able to see your favorite player play.
Really, I don't understand how they sell tickets. Like, how do they sell tickets? Like, how do you sell tickets to the NBA All-Star game when it's 200 and something to 187? I mean, are we kidding with that?
Well,
like, I don't know, man.
The diehard fans of the NBA don't care. I mean, they go for points, they go for threes, 40-foot shots and alley-oops and all that. That's what their fans like. So
I'm not that guy, man. I'm really not that guy. Did you watch it? Are you a golfer, Billy? Did you watch the players?
I heard about the players. Who won that?
Scotty Scheffler, man. He came back. Yeah, the dude hurt himself like Thursday. He hurt his shoulder, and then he just kept hanging around, and then he overtook those guys yesterday. And I don't know if you saw the putt that Wyndham Clark had on the 18th hole, but it lipped all the way around the cup. That was to tie it. That is so, like, that shows you how tough golf is, man. Just it lift all the way. He's about to go do his tiger celebration, man, because you could tell he was like he's about to go, and that thing lipped all the way around. It did a 360.
That's
crazy.
Awful. That's the dark side of golf right there. I mean,
it is the dark side of golf, man. Golf is hard, man. Xander Schauffele hadn't won since like 2022. He won a gold medal back in the Olympics, and he's up for the gold medal again. You know, he's going to be going for that again, but he hadn't won since 2022, and he was leading. And then I don't know if you see that island green at TPC. That's intimidating, Hoss.
Man,
very intimidating.
Is it Amen Corner at the Masters that?
It is, yes.
Spieth hit that like miracle shot that one year, but I mean everybody talks about that as one of the tougher holes in golf. But what is the first major here? Is it the Masters?
It's the Masters. Yeah, it's coming up next month. It's in the first. That's 1st of April. They've done it where they've scheduled it where it's a month at a time. So they've got the Masters, and then I forget what's next.
Right after March Madness.
I think it's the PGA, then I think it's the U.S. Open, then I think it's the British Open. So it's a cool. You know, you've got 4 months with a major, and it's really cool. And they set that Players Championship up down in Jacksonville at the TPC Sawgrass. They set it up to be a major, and that's kind of because the PGA does not own the other tournaments. They're all away from the PGA Tour, so that's why the live guys like the Dustin Johnson, the Brooke Koepkas, they can go and they can play in the Masters, U.S. Open, the PGA, and those other, and the British Open, because they're not involved with the PGA tournament. So 50 years ago they decided, hey, we're going to make this be kind of a major. It's not called a major, but the major for the PGA Tour, and it's become a really cool deal, and that's a really cool golf course to play.
The gentleman's game. I love watching.
It's hard. You cannot. It's so hard. Golf is so hard. It's one of the most irritating games that I love. I'm practicing it all the time. I'm trying to tweak with my swing, but you got to be able to putt. You drive for dough, and you drive for show, and you putt for dough. And I just, man, if you can't putt, if you're a really good putter, you can hang in there. But if you can't putt and you're not good around the greens, man, it's just a tough game.
We still got to get you and George back at X Golf. See what that looks like. It might get
me
dangerous.
and golf and me and George and golf just that ain't working, dude. When George is hitting a par 3 and he's hitting a driver, I'm out.
Oh, that'll do it for us. That's Kelly Holcomb. Maybe we'll get that golf outing one day here down the road, especially with summer coming up. But that's Kelly. I'm Billy. Hopefully, I think George. I got a text from George. What was it? 5 minutes ago. He said verbatim, "I think I'm good tomorrow. Feeling better." So the old director might be back.
I'm gonna make fun of him tomorrow when he gets there. Hopefully he can. Hopefully, but I'm gonna mess with him. I mean, you gotta suck it up and let's go. Of course, with me saying that, then I'm gonna get sick next week or the week after, and then I'm gonna have to suck it up.
Yeah, karma's sometimes.
Karma's that way, and the good Lord has a sense of humor. When you're always messing with somebody, you better be ready to get messed with, because that's what happens.
All right, that'll do it. That's Kelly Holcomb. I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for watching another George Plaster.
See you, Billy.